Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Sung Yu. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. Today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group, which I'll explain to you guys what that is a bit later. We start each one of our classes with meditation because the Buddha figured out how to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind is completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And this actually comes through training of the mind. You're training the mind through applying the tools and techniques that he actually taught. He figured out how to get to this enlightened mental state on his own, where the mind's completely eliminated all the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. You can actually experience this as you're making your way closer and closer to enlightenment. And meditation is part of that, but you would need much more than meditation. That's why after meditation, I'm going to be sharing some teachings with you guys to help you understand more about what the teachings of the Buddha are. But if you'd like to join for meditation, the way that I start this is with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. And I see some of you guys have chanting sheets. They're over there on the cabinet. If you'd like to get a chanting sheet, you're welcome to chant along. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting or recitation of the teachings as a way to help his students commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally, and this allowed them to commit the teachings to memory. So chanting was used as a learning tool or as a learning device. So you can understand that there isn't a rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. The Buddha never taught any of those kinds of things as part of his teachings. If you've been seeing rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer associated with the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't actually the teachings of the Buddha. So when I'm doing these chants, it's actually helping to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you would like to experience that benefit, you can actually do some chanting, which is going to help ease your mind into the meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you read the English translations of the chants, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of this, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha wouldn't walk around and say, "Here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me." But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and joy that is the enlightened mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you might actually have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's why I think these chants actually came from his students, either during his life or after his death. So you're going to see that I'm going to chant these on the way into meditation to help get more benefit out of the meditation itself. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to be providing you some guidance, where I'm essentially going to be teaching you or instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then there's going to be a period of time of quietness where we're all meditating. Here at the temple, and anybody who's joining online, we'll just all be meditating at the same time. Now, during this period of time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds, like you might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping, someone here might cough or sneeze. This is all normal. If you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated or agitated. This is the mind itself causing these feelings. Oftentimes people think that it's the outside world that's causing these feelings, but it's actually what's going on within your own mind. The mind craves permanence in the unenlightened state while you live in an impermanent world. Things are constantly changing around you, but the mind craves permanence. So if you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you'll cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated. But if you're in meditation understanding that the world is impermanent, and that's part of the universal truths, when you hear a sound, you'll just be able to rest at ease and be peaceful because you know that sound's going to arise, it's going to change, and then it's going to fade away. It's impermanent. So you'll hear occasional sounds during meditation, but you can just reside peaceful and joyful in the meditation, understanding that the world functions exactly the way it's intended to function, which is with impermanence. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting, and then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand some of the teachings of the Buddha. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times, kind of like assembling a tool belt that you could use these different tools in different situations, because your body can't be in the same position permanently. It's not possible because we live in an impermanent world. So you're going to need these different positions, kind of like tools, and you would acquire this understanding through various courses and retreats as you're gaining more and more wisdom about the path to enlightenment. And you can assemble this tool belt for yourself of using these different tools at different times. But since oftentimes people are learning in the seated position, I'll provide you some guidance on this to help you understand. And then you can choose to use some of the things that I'm sharing if you like, or come up with your own things, because there's more than one way to sit. There isn't just one way to sit, because again, that would be permanence. So you can find whatever's comfortable for you. You can use what I share as maybe a recommendation or things to consider. So you can use anything that I share or anything that you come up with on your own. So you could be sitting on the floor in a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or a wheelchair. You can sit however you like. But if you're on the floor, you might consider having some cushions under your rear. This will kind of help soften your seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross-leg position, you might just choose to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and can cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. This isn't actually possible. So some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of anybody who's sitting in a chair, on a bench, or a sofa, or a wheelchair, you can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. Your upper body should be erect, with the sternum up and the shoulders back. This will help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you'd like the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation, and having the sternum up and the shoulders back will help you to be able to keep the mind attentive and alert so you can actively train it. Whereas if you were slouched like this, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you are real rigid with the upper body, the mind can be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle where the mind can be attentive and alert, but it also makes it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to do this chanting to ease into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join, and then I'm going to come back in with guidance during the meditation. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang สัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะ พุทธังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิ สุปฏิปันโนมหะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามิ นะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ 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 อิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone in class today. Good morning to everyone who's joining online as well. As I was sharing, today is our Pali Canon and English study group, which is a program that we do which is a little bit different than some of our other programs. All of our other programs, classes, courses, and retreats, I'm helping students to be able to develop a foundation in understanding the path to enlightenment, the framework of understanding what the Buddha actually taught. And what I normally do is I teach kind of in a traditional style of teaching, where I'll teach for like 15, 20, 30 minutes and then open up for questions and teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes and then open up for questions. But this program is a bit different. We use this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment, in all of our foundational programs. This is the first volume of the book series that I share. This book series is titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. This is where you would like to start. And you can actually get this for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it yourself. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon if you have access to Amazon. And this is the best place to start. But in a program like this, once a student already has a framework, this particular program, it helps to kind of fill that in. And what I do is all the other volumes of the book series, volumes 2 through 13, which today we're in volume 2, we're gradually walking our way through this to be able to learn the original words of the Buddha. We actually just restarted this program last week, where I teach this program a bit different. It's more like a study group, where what I do is I invite students here at the temple or anybody who's joining online to be able to read from the original words of the Buddha. And as you read a chapter from the original words of the Buddha, then I will share some teachings on that when you're finished. And then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you have. It's more like a study group as opposed to all the other programs that we have. And this isn't where someone would typically start out on their journey to enlightenment in a program like this. But if this is your first time here, which I can see many of you guys it is, you'll learn plenty from being here. It's just that understand that this isn't where you'll typically start. You usually start with some of these other programs that we have in order to be able to help students to be able to understand the path to enlightenment and how an individual would really get started on the path. And what I do is I invite students here. If you'd like to read, we have microphones in the white bowl in the middle of the room. All you need to do is get a microphone, take it back to your seat, press the gray button. You're going to see the lights come on, and you just hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. And then if you'd like to keep these microphones with you, you're more than welcome to, because you might have a question or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that'll be sure that we don't get feedback through the speakers. And anybody who's in Zoom, you can also volunteer to read by just electronically raising your hand, unmuting your microphone, and then you can either read or ask any questions that way. And then also for those of you guys in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can also ask questions by putting it into the comment section, and I'll be able to see that and then answer your question that way. So this first chapter is chapter 11. And when we get to this in the Pali Canon English study group, I typically don't read it and I don't teach the entire teaching, because this is actually the core central teaching of the Buddha. It's called the Eightfold Path. This is actually a pretty detailed teaching. This is the path to enlightenment. If you were interested in getting to enlightenment, you would need to know this path inside and out, backwards and forwards, because you're going to need to be able to train your mind through this path. This is what's actually helping you to be able to get to the enlightened mental state. If you didn't know this path, you would have no ability to make your way to enlightenment. What enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you no longer experience any discontent feelings. You would have eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing things like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings can be eliminated from the mind through training of the mind. Oftentimes people think it's the outside world that's causing these feelings, but it's actually what's going on inside one's own mind. You can actually eliminate that, and you'll actually get to the point where the mind's not only experiencing complete peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy, but you'll notice that the mind's focused. You have concentration, clarity, and deep memory, because the Buddha discovered these individual pollutions that are in the mind. And when you understand what those are and you apply the tools and the techniques to uproot them out of the mind, this is actually what produces more and more of the qualities of the enlightened mental state. It's not belief that the Buddha taught. If you've been taught those kinds of things where you're believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die, that's not actually what the Buddha taught. He never taught based in belief. He taught you to cultivate wisdom. He also didn't teach rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. So if you've been taught those kinds of things, that's not from the Buddha. He never taught those kinds of things. This is his core central teaching, which is going to help you to be able to understand how to move the mind to the enlightened mental state. And I share this in detail in all of our foundational programs. It takes me about 2.5 hours to teach this entire teaching. So if you end up, say, attending our group learning program tomorrow at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m., I'm going to be sharing a section of the Eightfold Path tomorrow. It's the moral conduct section. If you're attending our retreat that's coming up, it's starting on Sunday at 3 p.m., and then it's going to be all next week. I'm going to be teaching the Eightfold Path next week. I think it's on Monday, where I'll be teaching the entire Eightfold Path. Starting in the morning, the entire day, I'll be teaching the Eightfold Path in detail. So this is a core central teaching that somebody would need to be able to understand. And by the time someone's gotten to this program, they usually have already studied it and is already practicing it to a certain degree. So usually when I get here, what I do is just invite students to be able to ask any and all questions that they like about the Eightfold Path, where the other chapters, you'll see how we do this. So just to kind of give you guys a summary, what the Buddha is teaching as part of right view is he's teaching something called the Four Noble Truths, where he explains to you the problem in your mind is discontentedness, that your mind experiences conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, you will experience either a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, or a feeling that is neither painful nor pleasant. Pleasant feelings are like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. It's very pleasant for you to experience that. But then there's painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety. These are all very painful for the mind to experience. But then there's neither painful nor pleasant feelings like shyness or uncomfortableness or dissatisfaction. This is actually coming from craving, desire, attachment. The mind is longing, yearning. It's chasing after the objects of its affection. And if the mind gets what it wants, it experiences pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, and others. But if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. So for example, if you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside and you get really happy and excited about that, that's a conditioned feeling. Based on the condition that it's sunny outside, you will now be happy. But if you went and took a shower thinking that you were going to go outside and do some hiking, and then you came out of the shower and you saw it's raining, if you're frustrated or irritated in that situation, that's because your mind is craving permanence. The mind is craving for the sun to be permanent, when in reality it is not permanent. So if you base your happiness on the sun, then that means your happiness is not permanent. That's why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because your mind in the unenlightened state is basing its inner feelings on some impermanent condition. Here's some other examples for you. If you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, that means when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated, right? That's all that's happening here is change. That's all it is. It's impermanence. But the mind craves permanence in the unenlightened state, not realizing that you live in an impermanent world. It doesn't have that wisdom. So when you come to understand that the cause of the problem is within one's own mind, that the mind is craving permanence when you live in an impermanent world, then you understand that you need to be able to eliminate this longing, yearning, and this craving for permanence. That's where the Eightfold Path comes in. That the Eightfold Path is the complete perfect plan that helps you to be able to understand how to train your mind to no longer base its inner feelings on something that's external. Because as long as you're basing your feelings on something external, these things are all impermanent. So as long as you base your happiness on something external, then you're not going to be happy permanently. That's the problem, that the unenlightened mind cannot be happy permanently. The unenlightened mind is kind of like, if my mom and dad do this, if my boss does this, if the weather is this, if the bank account is this, if I have this kind of house and this kind of car, if I get to go to Thailand, if I get to do these kinds of things, then I will be happy, right? There's this long list of things, and you're shrinking your ability to be happy, because you can only be happy when these things are true. So the Buddha is teaching you how to get away from that conditional happiness, where your mind can experience unconditioned happiness, unconditioned joy, where the mind is just always joyful. There doesn't need to be any condition met. You're inwardly happy. You're inwardly joyful. The mind is experiencing the mental state of unconditioned joy or unconditioned happiness. And it starts with this right view. What right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. As long as you go around the world blaming other people for your feelings, you will never get to happiness. You will never get to peace. The mind will tend to be unskillful. What you'll tend to do is you'll push people away. This is the mind thinking that it's someone else that's causing you to be angry or frustrated. You might have pushed away friends or family members out of your life. And you can see that that didn't solve the problem, because you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, speech, and actions. It's almost like an animal growling and roaring at another animal, trying to fear it into doing things a certain way. Or the third thing you'll do is you might put your expectations on people and try to pressure them or control them to do things your way. And not only will you be doing these things, but other people might be doing these things to you, where they might be pushing you aside. They might be bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they might be putting their expectations on you. So if you have right view, you can see that it's your own mind craving permanence, that's what's causing these discontent feelings. wrong view would be to blame other people for the feelings that you're experiencing. Because as long as you do that, you'll never actually address the real true problem, which is inside one's own mind. So in order to really get started on this journey to being able to understand how to get to the complete peace and complete joy, where you no longer experience all of these discontent feelings, you need to start with right view, is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because if you don't, then you're looking in the wrong place and you're just trying to change other people in the world, and you'll never get to peace and joy trying to change other people, because you can't change other people. And there's 8 billion people in the world. They're not all going to agree to do things your way. It's not possible. But that's what the unenlightened mind wants. It wants everybody to do things my way, because my way is the right way and the other way, that's the wrong way. That's the mind's ego that's speaking to you, thinking that your way is the right way and everyone else's way is the wrong way. So right view starts with understanding that it's your own mind that's causing those feelings. Right intention is right thinking or right thought, where you have the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Renunciation is where you're willing to let go of your false ideas, false beliefs, false opinions, and false views, as well as your unwholesomeness. Because there's a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct that every unenlightened being is conducting. So if an individual wasn't practicing the intention of renunciation, they would have a very closed mind, and they would be disinterested in looking at what it is that they currently believe about the world, their own opinions and views. They're just going to hold on to those and cling to those, thinking that everything that they currently know about the world is right. Where if you're experiencing anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings, there's certain wisdom about this world that you don't currently have. The mind is not yet awake. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment, it is to cultivate wisdom. So if you're experiencing anger, sadness, frustration, any of these other discontent feelings, the mind is not yet awake. It's lacking certain wisdom about the world around you. That's the mind struggling and having difficulties when there's that stress and anxiety and those other feelings. The mind is living in a world that it doesn't understand. When you get to the point where the mind is awake, you will see that you don't experience any anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings any longer. And the next part of that is this intention of, or this right intention, where you have the intention of renunciation. Be willing to let go of your false opinions, false beliefs, false views, because one of the very false things that you need to eliminate is the belief that other people are causing you to be angry or sad or frustrated. As long as you hold on to that and you don't practice the intention of renunciation, you will never be able to get to this peace and joy that the Buddha taught. So you're eliminating your false beliefs, opinions, and views, but you're not bringing in new beliefs in order to replace your old beliefs. You're actually bringing in wisdom. All of the teachings of the Buddha are based in wisdom. You're learning, examining, and investigating his teachings. You are reflecting on them to independently verify if they're true or false. And then you're practicing his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life. And where you see this wisdom coming in and it's conflicting with things that you've believed your entire life, you need to be willing to let those things go. That's what the intention of renunciation is, and eliminating your unwholesomeness. Then there's the intention of non-ill will, which is the intention of goodwill or active goodwill towards all beings. The intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. You can't cause other people to be angry or sad or frustrated or any of these other feelings. So if people are blaming you for the feelings that they're experiencing, you're not causing those feelings. You can't, just like people can't cause you to be angry or sad or frustrated, you can't cause other people to experience those feelings either, but you can cause them harm. Causing someone harm is to cause harm to their physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation. If you cause harm to someone's physical body, their material possessions, or their reputation, they're going to want to cause you harm too. This is the natural law of cause and effect. Whenever you put out harm, harm is going to come back to you. So the Buddha is teaching you how to get to the point where you're practicing harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm. Because how could you get to peace and joy when you constantly have this harm coming back to you over and over again? The only reason why you would experience harm coming back to you is because you're putting out harm yourself. So you need to get to the point where you're practicing the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm. That's what this second factor is. And I was teaching this recently in the group learning program, helping students to be able to understand each of these factors. Tomorrow in the group learning program, I'm going to be teaching right speech, right action, and right livelihood, because this is moral conduct. There's a certain amount of unwise moral conduct that an unenlightened being is functioning through. And the Buddha is not teaching you rules and commandments here. Sometimes that's the way people look at this stuff. He's actually teaching you the natural law of cause and effect, or action and result, that when you function through this, it's causing harm, and harm is going to come back to you. So I'm going to be teaching this tomorrow in the group learning program. So if you'd like to learn about this, you're more than welcome to. It's going to teach you about this natural law of cause and effect. And then there's this mental discipline section, which I'm going to be teaching 2 Sundays from now, not tomorrow, but the next Sunday, where the Buddha is teaching you right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is what's actually going to help you to put all of his other teachings into practice. If you didn't understand the mental discipline section, your mind is going to be uncontrolled. When you're experiencing stress and anxiety, that's the mind not having control. You don't have control over the mind. When you're angry, when you're sad, when you're frustrated, you don't have control over the mind. But the Buddha is going to teach you how to actually control your mind, so that now your mind doesn't have to experience those things. So just like you can opt out of a mailing list, of an email list, you can unsubscribe from it. The same thing's true about these discontent feelings. You can actually choose to no longer experience anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other feelings. But you need the wisdom of how to do that. And that's what the Eightfold Path is providing for you. So this is just a couple of little points about the Eightfold Path. Let me pause and see if you guys have any questions on this. If you guys are online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or here you guys can use the microphones if you like. So it looks like Chris has a question on Zoom. He says, Teacher David, does an individual in the 3rd stage of enlightenment still have a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct? Thank you, sir. They typically are not practicing unwholesome moral conduct, because by that point they've eliminated wrong behavior and observances. They've also eliminated their sensual desire and their ill will. They're just having a little bit of ickiness within their own mind, only about once every 3 to 6 months. So they're not really doing anything that's unwise in terms of their moral conduct. They've purified all of that. Let's see. We also have another question here. Looks like from someone that I can't necessarily pronounce your name. Sorry about that. He says, or she says, Master, what happens when armies start killing each other? Is it right action? So it really depends. That if an individual is actively going out and killing, and they're choosing to kill, that is an action that's going to produce unwholesome results, because whenever you cause harm to a living being, this harm is going to come back to you. So if somebody was aggressively, actively in choosing on their own to now go out and kill, that's going to produce unwholesome results. But if you're in a position of defense where you're defending your property, or you're defending, this being who you are, now that's not going to produce unwholesome karma, because this harm is coming at you, and you're using the ability to stop this harm by potentially killing this other person. If this person's trying to kill you, and you actually killed that person, you're not producing any unwholesome results there. You've actually produced a wholesome result. Whereas if you just stood there and let this person stab you with a knife, or shoot you with a gun, or beat you up, that's going to produce unwholesome results for you. So the Buddha didn't teach to preserve all life at all cost. That's what people don't understand when they learn his teachings. Like this teaching here on the Eightfold Path under right action, he's just giving something here where he says, so very basically, refrain from taking life. And then he has these other ones as well. But this is actually just a summary here. You need to be able to look to the 5 precepts, which is in volume 3. I also have it in volume 1 and 2, where I've actually really expanded it to be able to help you understand how to apply it. Whereas if you look at what he's actually teaching you, that plugs in here, because the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into. If you look at the 5 precepts, he doesn't say it just simply like this. This is just pointing to the 5 precepts. And now when you go look at the 5 precepts, he explains to you to live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. He doesn't say preserve all life at all costs, because he's helping you to be able to see this cause and effect. So for example, if you had termites that were infesting your house and eating your house, living compassionately for the welfare of all living beings would be maybe you do some research and you figure out, is there a way to eradicate these termites without killing them? This is to have compassion for them, meaning concern for their misfortune. And when you do that research, what you might come back with is, no, there's no way to actually eradicate termites today without actually killing them. And you might actually need to hire someone to come and get rid of these termites. And this is the harm that they're experiencing as a result of them causing harm. This is the natural law of karma, that these termites are choosing to cause harm to someone's material possession, and now harm is coming to them. And that's the unfortunate thing about being in the animal world, is they lack the consciousness to understand that they're actually causing harm in this situation. Whereas if it was us, and we ate wood and that's what we were eating as our diet, we would choose to go out in the forest and eat trees where it doesn't actually impact any other living beings. But these particular beings, termites, they don't have that level of consciousness. So whenever harm is coming at you, what you can do is cause the least amount of harm as possible in order for that harm to stop coming towards you. So for example, if you were in your house sleeping at 2 a.m. in the morning, and someone breaks into your house through your window, you hear the window shatter at 2 a.m. in the morning, right? This person's not bringing you chocolate and flowers. That's not why they're there. They're there to do harm, right? So what I suggest to people is, if possible, get out. Leave the house, because if they would like to cause harm to the material possessions or steal something, so be it. At least you can call the police. They're the ones who have the tools and the techniques and the training to be able to deal with that kind of thing. But the teachings of the Buddha aren't black and white, right? It's not like, if this happens, do this. And if this happens, do that, because that would be a permanent answer for every situation, where the variables in each situation are going to be different. Maybe someone breaks into your house at 2 a.m. and maybe you look outside and there's a gang of people outside your house. Not wise to go outside, right? Or maybe you look outside your window and the whole neighborhood's on fire, right? And now you hear someone breaking into your house, right? Not wise to necessarily go outside, right? So you need to be able to look at the variables in any given situation and decide what would be wise. And that's why the Buddha is teaching you to live compassionately for the welfare of all living beings. He's not teaching you to preserve all life at all costs. So if somebody was attacking you in your home, stabbing you with a knife, hitting you with a piece of wood or things like this, and you needed to cause harm in order to stop that harm coming to you, you'll experience wholesome results in that situation, or wholesome karma. So the same thing with soldiers, right? So if a soldier was, say, defending their country and there's this invading army that's coming at them, they could experience wholesome results if they're actually defending their property. This could be a way to produce wholesome results, potentially, right? They're still killing, so there's a likelihood for them to be killed in a war, but nonetheless, this could produce wholesome results. You need to look at each one of these situations in a unique way. So it's not just, if you choose to kill, there's always going to be unwholesome karma. There are situations where if someone was attacking you in your home and you had to kill that person, that you would actually be producing wholesome karma. And that's why you wouldn't have any unwholesome things coming to you. You actually have something wholesome that's happening, is that you're going to actually be able to live longer, and you're not going to get arrested by the police. They're going to listen to you and see what's happened. And they're going to just be like, all right, yeah, you did something that's wise here. You defended your property. You defended this being who you are. You defended your family, and we're not going to arrest you, because the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, that you didn't go out actively trying to kill this person. You were just at home when this person broke into your home. So you can understand it from that perspective. Okay. Let's see if we have any other questions. Okay. I don't see any other questions anywhere. So I'm going to move to this next chapter, and I'll show you guys how this normally works. I saw, Chris, you actually volunteered to read. So if you'd like to read this first chapter, by the way, I'll show you guys what you have here, because I'm scrolling through all of this stuff. This is the words of the Buddha. This is a reference that takes you back to the original source teachings. That's why we call it the Pali Canon in English Study Group, because the Pali Canon is 45 volumes of books that are this thick. That's the original words of the Buddha. That's the most largest complete collection that we have of the teachings of the Buddha. This is an excerpt from that. And this reference takes you back to the original so you can see where it actually came from. And then you've got words from me that are further helping you to be able to understand how to integrate this teaching into your life. And that's what I'm scrolling through. But for someone who reads these books, they could actually read the words of the Buddha, they would have my words, and they would have reference to be able to go back and build confidence that that's what that's coming from. So now, Chris, if you would like to read this chapter 12, this is how we usually do our Pali Canon and English study group.
World would not lack for arahants. In whatever teachings and discipline the Noble Eightfold Path is found, no ascetic is found of the first, the second, the third, or the fourth grade, but such aesthetics can be found of the first, second, third, and fourth in a teachings and discipline where the Noble Eightfold Path is found. Now, Nabhada, in these teachings and discipline, the Noble Eightfold Path is found. It are to be found ascetics of the first, second, third, and fourth grade. These other schools are lacking of true ascetics. But if in this one the monks were to live the life to perfection, the world would not lack for arhats.
Okay, thank you, sir. So first, let me explain what an arahant is. An arahant is an enlightened being. This is how they would refer to an enlightened being during the lifetime of the Buddha. This is an individual who's purified their mind of something called the 10 fetters. There's 10 individual pollutions that the Buddha discovered in the mind, and he figured out the tools and the techniques of how to eliminate these out of the mind. And when you've done this purification and this training of the mind over a consistent long-term period, the mind is now purified. You're experiencing the peace and joy. You're experiencing the qualities of the enlightened mental state. So the Buddha referred to this as an arahant, or what we would refer to today as an enlightened being, someone who's purified their mind. This individual is now functioning as a perfect human being. They're no longer causing harm in the world. Their mind is completely peaceful and joyful. They're experiencing all those qualities that I talked about. Their personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. You can't even experience a bad mood any longer. By the time you get to enlightenment, it's physically impossible to even experience a bad mood. So there's these 4 stages of enlightenment: first, second, third, and fourth. The mind is actually enlightened when you're in the 4th stage of enlightenment. And the Buddha referred to that as an arahant. We would call it an enlightened being. So what the Buddha is saying here is that if the Eightfold Path, that teaching we were just talking about, is not in a collection of teachings, that it's impossible for someone to get to either the first, second, third, or fourth stage of enlightenment. Because you might think during the lifetime of a Buddha that he was the only one teaching, right? Because if you lived during the lifetime of a Buddha, you'd probably be interested in learning with that person. But not everybody knows who a Buddha is and who a Buddha is not. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were other people who were teaching too, and they were claiming that it was their teachings that actually led to enlightenment. And what he was saying here is that if there's a collection of teachings somewhere that doesn't contain the Eightfold Path, then it would be impossible for someone to get to either the first, second, third, or fourth stage of enlightenment. That's the central teaching of the Buddha, and you're going to need that to be able to purify the mind. But then he says in the second paragraph that if there is a collection of teachings that has the Eightfold Path, then there would be someone who could get to the first, second, third, or fourth stage of enlightenment. So he's just helping you to be able to see the importance of the Eightfold Path, how this is a central teaching that you're going to ultimately need to be able to learn and practice in order to be able to progress through the stages of enlightenment. And he's referring to it as a school. And you might think about the teachings of the Buddha like a school. It's a collection of teachings that you're actively learning. So again, if you've seen rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer associated with the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't the teachings of the Buddha. If you're seeing belief associated with the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't the teachings of the Buddha. It's not about believing a bunch of things and hoping something good happens when you die. It's about learning, growing, and developing in this life to experience the peace and joy in this life. That's what he's guiding you to. But oftentimes you see countless misunderstandings in the world where people aren't understanding this because they don't study the original words of the Buddha. That's why this book series is titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden, because these teachings have been fairly hidden for a long period of time. Not intentionally, but just unintentionally, because 45 volumes of books that are this thick, it takes a lot of money, a lot of resources to print that out. The average Thai person here in Thailand would have to spend 3 months of their salary in order to be able to acquire the teachings of the Buddha. And you probably don't own any book collections worth 3 months of your salary. So even the average temple doesn't even have access to the Pali Canon. So that's why this book series, it extracts this and consolidates it and makes it manageable for you. And then I give it away for free so that students can get access to it. And that's what's going to be able to help you to be able to see what the Buddha actually taught and what he didn't teach. It sounds pretty obvious that if you're going to study the teachings of the Buddha, you'd like to be studying with the words of the Buddha. That sounds pretty obvious, right? But that's not what the world does. I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and I've only ever been to one temple that actually shares the original words of the Buddha. So that's less than 1%. So you will see massive amount of misunderstandings in the world. But what the Buddha's focusing you on is it's the Eightfold Path that's going to lead to your enlightenment. It's not belief. It's not any kind of rituals or ceremonies or any of that kind of stuff. It's not about an afterlife. That's not what the teachings of the Buddha are. It's about learning, growing, and developing in this life. And it's the Eightfold Path that's going to guide you in how to do that. So do you guys have any questions on this chapter here? Anything you guys would like to ask? Okay, it looks like we have a question coming in here on Zoom. All right. This is a question from Chris. Teacher David, you have mentioned before that you are not aware of any other teachings that lead to enlightenment, but you also say that there is more than one right way to do things. Can you explain what you mean there? Thank you. So in day-to-day life, there's always more than one way to actually do things. Oftentimes we think there's just one way to do things. If it was some particular challenge that you're looking to address, there's always going to be more than one quote unquote right answer. There's always one wrong answer, which is to get angry or bitter or harsh or hostile. That's never going to lead to beneficial results in your day-to-day life. But there's countless wise things that you could potentially do. Getting to enlightenment, if you had 10 different enlightened beings, they're not all going to make decisions the same way. Getting to enlightenment isn't to create like a cookie cutter type person where everybody's exactly the same. All enlightened beings will have different personalities and they will have different thoughts. But the thing that's the same about all of them is none of them experience discontentedness. So there's always going to be more than one quote unquote right way to do things. But in terms of getting to enlightenment, that's the only way that I know is through the Buddha's teachings. I don't know of any other teachings that would actually guide someone to enlightenment, because the things that I've explored, nothing is teaching you to eliminate your discontent feelings. Even modern psychology, they're teaching you to cope with your feelings or manage your feelings. Even modern psychology doesn't realize that you can actually eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings. So it's only in the teachings of the Buddha that I've ever found and also experienced the complete elimination of discontent feelings. So that's what I mean when I say those things, Chris. And you're welcome. Pleased to help you. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So let's go to this next one. Would someone like to read that, either here or online? This is chapter 13. Looks like Rachel's going to get it, Chris. I see your hand up. We have someone that's going to volunteer here since you... Oh, actually, no. You just read the last one, right? Okay, yeah. So we'll let Rachel do it. I was getting lost track there.
The difference between the Tathagata and a monk liberated by wisdom. Monks, the Tathagata, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one, liberated by non-clinging through a fading away of strong feelings towards form, through its fading away and elimination, is called a perfectly enlightened one. A monk liberated by wisdom, liberated by non-clinging through a fading away of strong feelings towards form, through its fading away and elimination, is called one liberated by wisdom. The Tathagata, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one, liberated by non-clinging through a fading away of strong feelings towards feeling, perception, volitional formations, consciousness, through its fading away and elimination, is called a perfectly enlightened one. A monk liberated by wisdom, liberated by non-clinging through a fading away of strong feelings towards feeling, perception, volitional formations, consciousness, through its fading away and elimination, is called one liberated by wisdom. Therein, monks, what is the distinction? What is the disparity? What is the difference between the Tathagata, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one, and a monk liberated by wisdom? The Tathagata, monks, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one, is the originator of the path unarisen before, the producer of the path unproduced before, the declarer of the path undeclared before. He is the knower of the path, the discoverer of the path, the one skilled in the path, and his disciples now reside practicing that path and become possessed of it afterwards. This, monks, is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the Tathagata, the Arahant, the perfectly enlightened one, and a monk liberated by wisdom.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So here the Buddha is helping you to be able to understand the difference between a Buddha and an enlightened being. Oftentimes people think that everybody is a Buddha. You won't see anywhere that the Buddha is teaching that. You will see people today that will try to tell you that everybody is a Buddha, or that you have Buddha nature, or that you can attain Buddhahood. This isn't actually true. The Buddha never taught this. He explained how rare it is that a Buddha exists in the world. And there's teachings from him that you can see that he talks about how rare it is that a Buddha exists in the world. Whereas if everybody was a Buddha, that's not very rare, is it? Right? So that's a separate type of teaching. But here he's explaining the difference between him, a Buddha, and someone who gets to enlightenment. Because a Buddha, we refer to them as a perfectly enlightened one. He referred to himself as the Tathagata. The word Tathagata means the one who's discovered the truth, or the one who shares the truth. That's what the word Tathagata means. So he very rarely referred to himself as the Buddha, but you will see some places where he refers to himself as a Buddha. He more frequently referred to himself as the Tathagata. And then he's saying the Arahant, which means the enlightened being, the perfectly enlightened one. We refer to a Buddha as a perfectly enlightened one because of what he's sharing down here, that a Buddha is a discoverer of the path, unarisen before. They're the originator of the path, unarisen before. They are the knower of the path. They're skilled in the path. They've actually figured out how to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. That's the first criteria of what makes a Buddha, is that they don't have any teachers or any guides. And because of that, we refer to them as a perfectly enlightened one. Because if you learn from someone who's not a Buddha, that individual, while they might have gotten to enlightenment, they'll have a little bit of extra things, extra baggage in their mind that they're doing that didn't necessarily lead to enlightenment, but they're still doing those things. So for example, if a Buddha, individual who's going to become a Buddha, if they try a certain meditation and they know that it doesn't actually lead to enlightenment, it's not helping to improve the condition of their mind, they will discard that meditation. But if they're doing something that they notice that is improving the condition of their mind, they know that that's part of the path to enlightenment. So by the time they get to enlightenment, all they know in terms of the path is the true path to enlightenment. They've discarded anything that doesn't actually help to improve the condition of their mind. So that's why we refer to them as a perfectly enlightened one, because they know the path inside and out, backwards and forwards. But an individual who's gotten to enlightenment through the help of a teacher or a guide, that teacher might have actually taught them maybe some things that didn't necessarily lead to enlightenment, and they're still doing those things out of respect for their teacher. Maybe like 5 or 10% of the things that they're actually doing didn't lead to their enlightenment. So we don't refer to an average enlightened being as a perfectly enlightened one. So a individual who's a Tathagata, a perfectly enlightened one, they meet 3 primary criterias. They get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to share their independently discovered teachings, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. These are the three primary criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. So that type of individual is very rare in the world. But anybody else could get to the point where the Buddha is talking about here, a monk liberated by wisdom. Liberation is freedom, where the mind is free. Because when you're experiencing stress and anger and anxiety and all these other feelings like guilt, shame, and fear, your mind's not free. It's bound up, right? Somebody could just say something. You could experience something in your day-to-day life. And then when you hear things or you see things or you smell things, you can get angry and frustrated just at the snap of a finger. It's being caused by the mind itself, but you're experiencing some contact from the outside world. If you see things that are agreeable to you, you'll be happy. But if you see things that are disagreeable to you, then you'll get angry or frustrated. That agreeable or disagreeable is being caused by your craving, desire, attachment. You crave things to be a certain way. And as long as they're this way, that's the mind's craving for permanence, you'll be happy about that. But when they're not that way, that's where the mind experiences disagreeable contact through the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, the body, or the mind itself. And when you have that disagreeable contact that you see to be disagreeable, you'll get angry or frustrated. But when you get to the point where your mind's fully trained, your mind is now liberated. It's free. It's no longer bound up. And this comes from the cultivation of wisdom. That's why there's no belief in the teachings of the Buddha. You will never see him say, oh, just believe me, just believe me. Because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. You're just believing it. But when you have wisdom, you've independently verified the truth for yourself. So that's what you're doing along the path, is you're learning from a teacher who is pointing out the things that you need, like a tour guide, but you're doing the work to learn, investigate, and examine, to then reflect on those teachings to independently verify if they're true or false. And then you're practicing those teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life. And that's what's actually producing the results when you're making decisions through that wisdom. So an individual can get liberated by wisdom, the cultivation of wisdom, but a Tathagata, an enlightened being who is now considered to be a perfectly enlightened one, who's gotten to enlightenment by themselves, they also have wisdom, but they've just done it on their own. That's what the Buddha is talking about here in this paragraph, that he's actually develop this wisdom on his own without the help of any teachers or any guides. So that's the difference and the disparity between an individual who's an actual Buddha, which is very rare, and an enlightened being who anybody and everybody can get to enlightenment. But a Buddha is going to be very rare in the world. So any questions on this chapter? Anything you guys would like to ask? Okay, so looks like Chris is asking, or no, this is not Chris, this is someone else. So the question is, Master, in Buddhism, what is wisdom and how does wisdom can be achieved through meditation? Wisdom isn't being achieved through meditation. Meditation in the practice of meditation is part of the wisdom that you need in order to be able to actually train the mind. This is a misunderstanding that people have sometimes about meditation, but you're not cultivating wisdom in the meditation. In the meditation, you're cultivating the mind and training the mind to either eliminate certain unwholesome qualities or cultivate certain wholesome qualities. So the meditation we just did this morning, the breathing mindfulness meditation, you're eliminating the unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment. Because with craving, desire, attachment, your mind's holding on, craving permanence. But when the mind moves off the breath and you let go, that's training your mind to let go. Because in your day-to-day life, when anger is arising, it's because your mind's holding on. It's craving permanence, and you need to let go. So that's what that meditation is doing, is training your mind to let go. And you're cultivating the wholesome qualities of mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration. Because with that awareness of mind, you can see where your mind's longing, yearning, and chasing after things, and now you can train your mind to let go. So the meditation is not to cultivate wisdom. The way you cultivate wisdom is through investigation and examination of the teachings. You then reflect on them to independently verify them, whether they're true or false, and then you practice the teachings. And now as you're practicing the teachings and you see the improvement to the condition of your mind in your life, that's how you know what you're learning and practicing is the truth, because you've independently verified it through the learning, reflection, and the practice. And now you know the truth and you have wisdom about the natural laws. And then he asks a question. He says, how do we know if a person is a enlightened one? The way to know whether someone's enlightened or not is based on the condition of their mind. If an individual has a completely peaceful and joyful mind, you'll see that they're never angry, they're never frustrated, they're never even the slightest bit annoyed. But the only reason why you would be interested in this is if you're actually going to learn with someone. You don't just go around to the average person and try to figure out whether they're enlightened or not. The more you understand about enlightenment, you will know whether people are enlightened or not very easily, but that's not the goal of the path, is to go around and try to determine whether someone is enlightened or isn't enlightened. Instead, you focus on your own enlightenment. But you'll see that someone who's enlightened, their mind will be completely peaceful and joyful. They won't even have the slightest bitterness or hostility or ickiness in the mind. You'll notice that their mind's focused, they have concentration, they'll have clarity and deep memory. You'll notice that they'll be loving and kind and warm and gentle. They'll be compassionate. They'll treat all beings equally. They won't have ego in their mind where they're putting themselves above people or below people. They'll just think of themselves as being equal. So they'll be loving and warm and gentle with everybody around them. Chris is asking, Teacher David, is thinking and pondering part of reflection? Thank you, sir. Yes, that part of the teachings of the Buddha in the Eightfold Path, where he teaches to think and ponder the teachings, that is the reflection, where prior to the path to enlightenment, when you're going through life, you're working with whatever wisdom that you have or lack thereof. So whenever you're confronted with a certain challenge, you might find it very difficult to be able to apply any kind of decision making that's going to solve this issue or move you past this issue. You will have a lot of struggles and difficulties because you're lacking wisdom. That's the mind struggling. That's why you're experiencing that, because of the lack of wisdom. So what you do as you get onto the path to enlightenment and you start learning these teachings, now when you're facing a certain challenge, you start thinking and pondering. You start reflecting on the teachings of the Buddha and how can you handle this situation through those teachings. And now through that process, you will cultivate wisdom, because before you didn't have any kind of understanding of how to address this particular challenge. And that's why the mind was struggling and having difficulties. But now with this newfound understanding that you find through learning and investigating and examining the teachings, you start reflecting on that in your day-to-day challenges. And now you start making decisions based on that. And that's where you see, oh my gosh, this was so much easier. When my mom and dad started yelling at me, I just walked away. Wow, that was so much better than standing there and trying to argue and yell and holler at my mom and dad and convince them that I'm right and they're wrong. Or my brothers and sisters were being degrading and disparaging and they were talking down to me. It was so much better to just walk away rather than sit there and yell and holler at them and try to convince them that what they're saying is wrong and they shouldn't be saying those things. Instead, I just walked away and my mind is so much more peaceful. I was able to protect my own peacefulness, right? So you learn these things in the teachings of the Buddha, that rather than standing there and puffing out your chest and arguing and being hostile and bitter and trying to tell everybody that they're wrong and convince them that you're right and they're wrong, you're not going to get anywhere with that. That's just going to allow your mind to continue to be angry and bitter and hostile and harsh. But when you think and ponder about these teachings and you learn about what the Buddha is teaching you, and you learn that it's unwise to do that kind of thing, and you just walk away and you see how peaceful and joyful your mind is from that, and you're like, wow, that worked so much better. Now you have wisdom of how to address these kinds of situations where in the past, before you did this thinking and pondering, you struggled and you had difficulties. You were in there yelling and hollering and being bitter and harsh and hostile and trying to convince them that they're wrong and you're right. You're not going to get anywhere with that. So you learn that it's just better to walk away. And that's where you cultivate the wisdom and you just know how to handle these things. But you'll find it very hard to walk away because your mind has craving, your mind's holding on, and you have ego, and you want to convince this person that you are right and they are wrong. But when you get rid of your ego and you start letting that go, you realize that that's not what this world is about. It's not about going around the world convincing everyone that you're right and they're wrong. It's about protecting your own contentedness, protecting your own peacefulness. And oftentimes the best thing to do is just walk away. But if you have ego and you have craving, you'll find it very hard to do that. You're going to want to stand there and argue with that person. And that's not going to lead to anything beneficial. Okay, you're welcome, Chris. Pleased to help you. Let me see if we have any other questions anywhere. Okay, so let's see what the next one is. Okay, let's just do this last one and then we'll finish up for today. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Yes, ma'am. Kristen.
The spiritual life is not lived for the sake of deceiving people. Monks, the spiritual life is not lived for the sake of deceiving people and persuading them, nor for the benefit of gain, honor, and praise, nor for the benefit of winning in debates, nor with the thought, let the people know me thus. But rather, this spiritual life is lived for the sake of restraint, abandoning, freedom from strong feelings, and elimination.
Couldn't be a better chapter for the example that I was just explaining. This is the Buddha teaching you that this life is not to stand there and argue and win in debates, because you're going to learn a lot of wisdom on this path to enlightenment. And you're going to know many things about this world that other people don't know. And if you went around the world trying to convince everybody that you're right and they're wrong, you've got 8 billion people to talk to. Right? And this is going to be very time consuming for you. You're going to have a massive training program all over the world, right? So the Buddha is not teaching you to go around and argue and be argumentative with people and that this is to win in debates. That's not what's going to produce the peace and joy in your life. Instead, what this spiritual life is for is this restraint. Understanding that your mind's going to be longing, yearning, and trying to, get out there in the world and convince people that you're right and they're wrong, but you need to restrain the mind. You need to pull it back. If you've ever ridden a horse and you know about pulling the reins back, that's what you're doing. You're pulling the reins back on your mind, not allowing your mind to continue to go out into the world being bitter and harsh and hostile. That's what the restraint is. And then he talks about this abandoning, that you're abandoning this unwholesome qualities that are in the mind, where you can get to freedom from strong feelings, the anger, sadness, frustration, all that other stuff. And you can eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing those things. That's what this path is all about, is getting to the freedom, the peace and the joy, the liberation, not this stuff up here. Gain, honor, and praise. That's your mind's ego. I want people to acknowledge who I am. I want people to validate me. I want people to see me and know who I am. I'm going to go out in the world and show people that I have a purpose in this life and I'm here to do something. This is the mind's ego. And this is what typically people are taught. You might look at these things as wholesome qualities, that you need to go out into the world and leave your mark on society, right? Sometimes people teach this. Boy, is that a big burden to carry around, to go out into the world and change the world. You can't change the world. It's not possible. You can change your own mind. That's challenging enough, just to change your own mind. But the idea of going out into the world and changing 8 billion people to do things your way, good luck with that. It's not going to happen. So that's why the Buddha is saying this life isn't to go out into the world for gain, honor, and praise and to get people to acknowledge and validate you and who you are as a person. It's not to win in debates, to argue and be bitter and harsh and hostile and be argumentative, nor with the thought, let the people know me thus. Look how great I am. Look at me. I'm doing everything in the world so wonderful. That's not what this path is about. This path is about training your mind to get to this peace and this joy. And you're not going to do that by going out into the world being egotistical or argumentative, trying to convince people that you're right and they're wrong. So that's what the Buddha is teaching you here, which is what we were actually just talking about. So any questions on this chapter here? No questions? Okay. So what I'm going to do then is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow and develop. I realize the things that I'm sharing with you are probably very different than what you've been exposed to in the past. You might not have learned these kinds of things before. And that's what the teachings of the Buddha are for. If you continue to do the same things that you've been doing your entire life, you're going to keep experiencing the same results. the same guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, the anger, the frustration, and all these other things. But if you understand that you don't yet have full wisdom, 100% of how to live this life in this world, then that's where the teachings of the Buddha are here to help you cultivate wisdom, to be able to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. But what's hurting you is inside your own mind. It's not the outside world. So there's plenty of teachings and resources and classes and courses and retreats here to be able to help you to gradually learn this path. Here on Saturday mornings, I just do a few chapters, some meditation with you guys, kind of helping you guys to understand what the Pali Canon English study group is. But on Saturday evenings, I do this from home. We actually don't do meditation. I have a completely online audience, and we do 10 chapters. We go through 10 chapters thoroughly. So if you're really interested in this type of learning and you would like to do that really in depth and thoroughly, it's at 9 p.m. on Saturday evenings. We do it online. So no matter where you are in the world, you should be able to get access to that. And where you can't attend live, it's recorded. So you can watch it on our Facebook channel or on our Facebook group, our YouTube channel, or our podcast. These are all ways for you to learn that. But where I suggest people to start is on Sundays at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. I teach here, and it's the same class. I just teach it at 2 different time zones because I live stream it. In that way, it makes it available to everybody throughout the world, where you can actually learn slowly but surely from our first book. And you can gradually build up your understanding of the path and how to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. This Sunday at 3 p.m., I'm going to be starting a retreat where Sunday and then for the whole next week, I'm going to be sharing teachings with people of everything you need in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment. You won't be in the first stage of enlightenment at the end of the retreat, but you'll have all the understanding that you need. So if you're looking for that information, you'll find it on our bulletin board over there. It's called Developing a Life Practice to Attain the First Stage of Enlightenment. That'll take you to our website where you can see all the information, or you can come and talk to me. All of these things are available at no cost, so you're always welcome to join these things. And you can join the entire retreat if you like, or you can just come for little bits and pieces and parts for whatever you have available in your time. You're welcome to come and go as you please. And then at 6:30 on Sunday, we have a meditation in the main hall where you're welcome to come, and I will be teaching meditation. And then I just basically open up to whatever questions you guys have. And it syncs up with the Sunday night walking market. So if you're coming to do some shopping and you'd like to stop by for some meditation and a little bit of learning, you're more than welcome to do that. So on Fridays, we have a social event here where at 6 p.m. every Friday, we kind of come together. We have like a little party. We have music playing. We might have some snacks or drinks and stuff. We usually play games, some board games and conversations. So if you're interested in meeting some wholesome people and doing something like that on a Friday night, you can always come here at 6 p.m. on Friday nights. So whatever you guys choose to do today, have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.